Hey YouTube, what's good? This is Steven and welcome back. Alright, so this is something that sort of popped into my mind, while I was at work. Odd, odd, a bit random, but yeah, this sort of popped into my mind, and I guess this is something I want to, put out there and get you guys' opinion on, right? And I guess this is more so directed at, the black people, or at least people who are part black but are white passing. And I just want to say, do you think that white passing people should pass as white? Just go on and live a white life, or do you think that they should not pass and just live a black life? You know, live their life as a black person. You know, and that's honestly, I think us as a community, we don't know what we want from you know really from biracial people, and also from especially from white passing people. Like, I don't think we know what we want as a community from them, because on one hand, you know let's say if they do pass, then we're like, oh, you ashamed to be black, like, oh, you want to be white, or it's seen as something negative, right? We view it as something negative, right? They're running away, like they're running away from the blackness, which of course is a theme. People, you know, running away from blackness and also distancing themselves from blackness one way or the other. That is, something that goes on in the community. We know that, right? But, you know, I would like to, sort of give my opinions on this, right? Because I'm trying to look at it from both angles. On one hand, I can understand people saying, they perhaps should pass, and also white passing people feeling like, well, I kind of just look white. Why not just be white? I can understand where that comes from. I do. Because people may feel like it may be easier for them just to live a white life versus to live a black life. You know, both because of the struggle of being black, but also just because sometimes black people may not feel like this person belongs in this, in the community. Like, oh, you look white, but of course, if it's a woman, they're gonna welcome the woman in. You know how that go. And that's another story for another day. All right. So on one hand, I can understand where people are coming from with that, but on the other hand, it's like, if you pass as being fully white, then you do distance yourself from your black family, and you know there are some white passing people who do have great relationships with their black family. Like, they don't want to be, they don't want to deny them as their people. There are a couple of white pastors who post videos on YouTube. Um, I know definitely these two women who do post. They're like both white passing. And they post videos kind of like about this sort of a subject. I forget their names. I think one might be named Casey and the other Alexa, maybe. I think Alexa, if I'm getting it right, or Alexa or Alexis. She has, like, her father is like black, but I think he's light. He has like light skin. And I think that Casey's mom, I think her name is Casey. Her mom is black, but I think she's light skinned as well. And I also did a video about that, how I feel about light skinned folks, especially going outside the community, but then having kids and wanting to bring them kids back into the community. I've done a video about that. So that's another video that I've already done. All right. But I noticed that these people, like the white passing people claiming black, tend to have a good relationship with the black side of their family, which is good, which is good, for them to have that relationship with their, black side of their family. So if those people were forced to not be able to claim blackness anymore, they may feel like they're distant, like they would have to sort of cut ties with their family, perhaps, to an extent, especially if they were to go on to live a black identity. Oh, sorry, if they were to pass for white and live a white identity, they would have to cut ties with them. Possibly, it's like it'll be weird because if they get in relationships with like white people and they bring them home to meet their family, then that's going to be kind of like, oh, I didn't know you were part black, you know, and that could be a little tricky. That could be a bit odd for some white people. They might not feel comfortable. You might see a whole different side of Becky or Billy when you let them know that, oh, you have black family, and they're not just like in-laws or anything, or cousins-in-laws or anything. No, they're your actual family. They're your biological family. All right. I heard a story about that involved Charlie Sheen and Denise Richards in this situation here. From what I heard, this is what I heard. I'm not sure if this is true or not true. Allegedly, all right. I got it from Tariq Nasheed. I think he actually talked about this, but he said like there's like some conversation between Charlie Sheen and Denise Richards where Charlie Sheen refers to Denise Richards as a nigger, right? And I thought he was going to say like a nigger lover, but he said nigger, right? He referred to her as a nigger, right? N-word, I say N-word. And that was because I guess rumor has it Denise Richards has like a black grandparent, That's what I've heard. This is what I heard, right? So you notice like Denise Richards pretty much passes for white. She looks white, but she saw a whole different side of Charlie, if this is true, right? She saw a whole different side of Charlie Sheen, right? This white man who's also perhaps white passing himself, because I think he might be a Latino. I'm not sure. But yeah. And I think if you do that, pass as white, you could set yourself up to be in situations like this, So on one hand, I can understand some white passing people, not wanting to pass, And here's some pictures of Denise Richards. Do you think she looks part black to you guys? But you notice, I think she dyed her hair though. When they want to look white, dye their hair. They made it look extras. That was Photoshop, I guess. How about this picture? You think that could be one of your sisters? I'm not sure, But that's what I heard, right? That's a bit of a sidebar. But let's get back to topic. All right. And I guess this video's, I don't know, I feel like I'm all over the place. My bad. Sorry about that. I think we as, the black community, I think sometimes we want white passing people to just be white. But, sometimes we don't. Because I think on some level, I think we see it as like rejection, And black people historically have been just so rejected. So it's like another group of people rejecting us, right? And I think, black people kind of take it a bit personally when this happens, especially if let's say if like some really famous person, who we assumed for years was white, right? Let's say we find out that famous person is black. Like, let's say, who's a famous person that we could use in this situation? Well, how about Brad Pitt? Let's say we found out that Brad Pitt was part black, and we felt like, it's like, oh, he has a black parent. Oh, wow, I didn't know that, and we would kind of feel like, oh, you've been passing. Like, we're like, oh, you've been passing for all these years. Like, why didn't you let anyone know you had a black parent? You hiding your black parent. I really think, people would kind of be like a bit like, oh, really? Be a bit more like a bit of an attitude, like, especially if he's, comes out now and be like, yeah, my mom is black, so I always felt, such a strong connection. to, black people, you know. Black people are like, what? Really? Let me see the receipts. And then, on the flip side, some black people may want white passing people to claim black identities, some because they may feel like, oh, well, you part black, you need to be in the struggle with us. And some people, perhaps because, they might have family members who are white passing, right? Um, so it's a bit, it's a little tricky, you know, my personal opinion and personal attitude, I'm like, okay, if you are white passing, I feel like you do, to an extent, kind of have a claim to whiteness, I feel like it is sort of kind of like racist to just say that someone doesn't have the claim to whiteness, you know. But also, I think like perhaps sometimes we may feel like, oh, you're siding with the enemy when you do that. It's like you're going to go and just support white supremacy, which I can understand that black people having some type of a feeling about that. It's like and also historically, there have been white passing people in our community, who have claim black identities, but white passing, but claim black identities, thugged it out in the black community, And on the flip side, there have been some black people white passing black people who have left the community historically and, just phased into whiteness, There's accounts of that as well. Um, so I think we as a community, I don't think we're going to come to a consensus on this. I think white passing people as a community are not going to be able to come to a consensus on this because it's just so much that goes into it. I feel like it's probably easier for white passing people to pass for white if they don't have really a connection to their black side, you know. And then there's some white passing people who don't have a connection to their white side. Like they've been raised by black people, so they might feel like, and also the black people in their family may have encouraged them to claim like a black identity, to assume a black identity. Um, who's that lady? Soledad O'Brien. Her mother definitely told her to claim a black identity. And also, she was born like in a time where you were supposed to like that was like the rule, the one drop rule, right? That was the rule. That was law. You were supposed to claim a black identity. So, yeah. Um, um, but sometimes claiming a black identity and being white passing can sort of lead to like cases of mistaken identity, you know. Um, I know I have like one kind of funny story on like my dad's side where like I think my grandfather's parents were like coming to like this government organization or something, and I think my grandfather's dad, like he's like really dark skinned, but his mom was like white passing, and like the person who was at the counter or whatever had said some like slick comment about my great grandmother being with my great grandfather, and then I think she wound up just going off on the dude or the lady. I'm not sure. I think it was a lady she went off on. Being very loud, foul mouth. Showing them showing that black side. Let me stop. But yeah, those situations can kind of come up like a case of mistaken identity. And also on my mom's side, a more serious case of mistaken identity happened involving the Ku Klux Klan, the KKK. My mother's grandparents, which I guess would be her mother's parents, um, my mother's grandparents in Louisiana. Her grandfather is white passing. Um, I think her grandmother was black, or at least I say black pretty much, right? definitely when you look at her, you see a black woman, right? When you look at him, you probably assume white man. So they were together, and they drove in town. You know, my great grandfather was driving, and his wife was sitting in the passenger seat, right? Apparently, that upsetted some members of the Ku Klux Klan because afterwards they want to pay a visit to my great grandparents' home. Um, yeah, and you know, thankfully, nobody was injured, hurt, killed. Thankfully that didn't happen. Um, but from what I heard, my mom said, it took a member. I think pretty much taking another, like some high-ranking white person wound up coming in and intervening in that situation, and basically saying saying to my great granddad that, oh, basically you look white, all right. So oh yeah, also the KKK was upset that my grandfather allowed my grandmother to sit in the passenger seat. She should be, to them, she should be sitting in the back seat, not the passenger seat. That triggered them to come and pay a visit to the house. They did not like that, right? Isn't that just crazy? Isn't that just absurd? It really speaks to their mentality, right? But yeah, I guess this would be a situation where a white person used their white privilege, to intervene in this situation, and he basically said that you look white, so when you come into town, you need to pretty much just um, have his wife, my great grandmother, in the back seat instead of the passenger seat, because when they saw you, they saw a white man. And that's how they assumed you, and that's how they took you as, right? And also they did see that my grandparents had like a lot of my great grandparents had like a lot of kids too. That probably wasn't something that was awesome for them to see. They probably didn't like that either. You know, but thankfully, you know, you know, nothing. We were, people were able to walk away with their lives. No violence or anything like that took place. However, I do wonder if this would have been like a white passing woman, black woman, and a black man. How would that have how would that have went? That's privilege, kind of like right there to an extent. Because like, oh, this white man, he can do this, right? Because historically, that has been, the thing. Like when it came to the white woman, no, 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 like, we ain't letting you get over. We ain't letting you over there. You know, they go crazy if they see that. So had the genders been reversed, this could have been a whole different situation, possibly. You know, um, you know, um, but to bring it back to subject, do you think white passing people should claim a white identity, or claim a black identity, or perhaps claim a mixed identity? I probably should throw that in too. You think this is when the mix should come into play? I think that would be kind of like a good balance, perhaps, where it's like, oh, they're not stepping on black people's toes, so to speak, but also they're not like, they don't have to distance themselves totally from blackness, right? But it's an interesting situation. What do you guys think? What do you think? I know this is a bit random. It's a bit of a random question, right? But it's just something that I thought I should put out there, kind of get your take on. And also, I do kind of think that passing, back in the day versus passing now is a bit different, just because, back then I can understand it a bit more because of like, oh, they didn't have like, black people didn't have access to these like the same opportunities as white people, so I can understand that. And also, the treatment of black people, especially back then, was like extremely bad. So I can understand it more so now, but today, to an extent, passing seems to me a bit antiquated, but people still do it though. There's people who still pass. And even the idea of passing itself is sort of almost sort of you know racist in an extent, because it's almost like, oh, it's like, where does blackness start and whiteness end, or where does whiteness end and blackness starts, when it comes to like a mixed person. you know I wonder, do you have to be 100% white to be white, or just look white? Where does whiteness begin and end? you know because I feel like blackness sometimes is just, we don't know. We know where it, perhaps we don't know where it ends. I think we can all say that it begins with, like, black people, quote unquote, like monoracial black people who look black when you see them, right? You know, people who are majority black, right, are 100% black too. But let me bring this video to a close. I could probably go on and say a lot more, but I don't want to take up too much of your time. So thanks a lot for watching, you guys. Feel free to comment. Feel free to subscribe. Feel free to give me a thumbs up. Your feedback and support are extremely appreciated and extremely valued. Also, scratch that subscription part. I've been meaning to drop that. I just kind of had that in my mind. I don't really want to ask people to subscribe anymore. Of course, you can definitely subscribe if you feel like, if you want to, and you feel the urge to. But I feel like I probably shouldn't be asking people to subscribe. I feel like, I don't know, I feel a little weird about that. I don't know, I know that's a bit odd to say, because don't get me wrong, I definitely appreciate the subscribers. I definitely do, because it feels like, I'm saying something that resonates with you, something that you can perhaps relate to, something that, you can get something from. So I definitely understand that. And I think where I'm coming from more so is like, perhaps I should just let people get to that on their own instead of encouraging them to do it. I don't know, it's a bit weird. But, thanks a lot for the support. It really means a lot. Thanks for watching as well. Until the next video, adios and goodbye for now.